Welcome to Not Factory Approved, the site where I like to find unique or cheap ways of doing things, usually cheap. So today's effort is a cheap cyclone filter for the shop vac. I have four. My wife has claimed one of them for upstairs. I have one on the radial alarm saw and one on the sandblaster and then one for cleanup. Can't have too many shop vacs. One today is going on the sandblaster, and the particles that come out consist of blast media, which is fairly coarse, or very fine dust. And the fine dust blocks shop vac filters very quickly. And I find out now that shop vac itself has gone out of business, so the filters are even harder to get. Here's what I've done so far, and I'll show you how I got to this point, what exists inside. The idea is to use a cheapo Home Depot 5-gallon bucket. I bought the lid as well, but plans have changed. I found a better way to do it. And so the cyclone is in the base, and then the particles are drawn up through the 2-inch tubing into the shop vac itself. This is quite a small one. It's quite old, but it is shop vac brand. And the pipe, I have glued it all together. This rests in place. I had to grind that down a bit with a wood rasp, which worked. So now it fits in there nicely. So this is glued, not glued, and this is not glued down here. This one is glued. I have another one sitting inside. It's a 45. So I will take this apart and I'll show you what's inside. So here's the bucket. I've cocked the one that is the inlet, and on the inlet it's beveled to try and get it to create some circulation against the wall, hopefully draw out some particles. Then I have the inlet to the vacuum, which is here. This is not glued. I'm not sure I have to. I think that's probably fine the way it is. And then that draws out. So the thought being that it will hit this wall of the bucket, come around and go here, and all the heavier particles will drop out. Hopefully some of the dust as well. And then the pipe comes out and goes up to the vacuum itself. So I found that the shop vac brand, many of them have the same size base, and they actually fit within a 5-gallon bucket. So if I get some class, I can lock this together. In the short term, I will use it without that, but that is the plan. So it drops down inside. It should provide a seal. And then this comes up. I attach the top part here. That goes there and on there. And two hands is much easier than one hand. So let's see how it works. For the hose into the base, I took a 2-inch coupler and I ground out the inside just slightly with a file, half-round file, and carefully and evenly, so not concentrating on one area but running it around, and that resulted in a fitting that just fits the flexible end of this vacuum hose. An on-the-fly modification is to extend this because the hose was interfering and bumping up against this edge inside. So I've left a gap on the inside of this one. So it's just glued to the outside. It should be fine. And I'll put this onto here, and then the hose can go in the end and have enough grip to stay there. This is the nasty stuff that the vacuum has to pick up from the sandblaster. The media itself isn't bad, but you can see that it's full of very fine dust. And that's what I'm trying to get rid of. or at least limit. Let's see how it does. The air filter that's in there is a little bit blocked. I haven't been able to find a replacement yet. Let's see what happens inside. I'm going to try it now with one of the vacuums that doesn't have a completely blocked up filter like the other one. It looks like for very fine dust, as comes out of the sandblaster, what is actually needed is not only the filter itself, but a cover. And then the cover can be easily cleaned and should make the filter last longer. This one has a foam filter, but for very fine dust I wouldn't recommend that, because the dust will get through the paper, and it will definitely get through the foam, and that will go into the motor. Especially something like this. This has a lot of iron in it. It will definitely result in shorts in the motor. As you saw previously, this is my effort at a cyclonic, or a pre-filter if you like, pre-reservoir before the shop vac. In this particular case, I'm using it on a sandblaster, which has incredibly fine dust, and it didn't settle out at all. It got rid of some of the media, but that's not the real problem. The real problem is that the fine dust is clogging the filter. The only places I can find filters are online, which means shipping and delay, etc. So rather than throwing away $20 filters, I'm trying to set this up to remove all the fine dust, or at least most of it, before it gets to the shop vac. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to change it slightly. I put that elbow down on the bottom with a 3-inch extension. Everything is dry fit, so I can take it all apart if I have to. I'm going to put some water in there. That should work to remove the fine dust. And this line is the outlet to the shop vac inlet, which sits on top. And then it exhausts out of the shop vac after the filter. So let's see what happens here. This is the filter that came out of the vacuum that I use for the sandblaster. I've blown it all out, but it's still very filthy and clogged. You can see inside it's quite dirty. So I'm going to put, the only other filter I've got at the moment is this one, which has been used for drywall, which usually clogs them pretty good, but I've blown it all out. It's not too restrictive, and you can see through the elements to light. So I'm going to use this one, but it's a slightly bigger diameter. So for the test, I've just taken this old piece of bicycle inner tube, cut off a length that fits exactly around the shop vac over there, and then I will put it on and clamp it in place, and that way it won't leak. There's the finished product. 2 hose clamps, an old automotive air intake, long ones, doubled bicycle tube. There's a small gap there, right there. I think it overlaps at the top, so I think that's not a problem. I think that's sealed off. Everything's tight. So now to put it together. Meet the test subject. A 15-inch GM rim from the 40s. Somewhat rusty, not terrible, but I still have to take the weights off, which I will do. A little rusty on the inside. See how that comes up, and see how much media dust gets into the vacuum cleaner. First lesson is check more often. Second lesson, don't fill it up so full. Well, if nothing else, the walls of the reservoir are cleaner. But the good news is there's a fair amount of sediment down in there. But this is not what I wanted. There's a fair amount of sediment in there too. I'll show the filter. Well, there is some residue in there. It's actually way better than the previous one. it doesn't collect near as much. So I'll just have to work out what actual water level and pickup I need to try and eliminate it picking up so much water. Revision number 2, it's probably more than that. I'm putting baffles in now to try and stop the water from rising up into the vacuum cleaner. I'm very fortunate that didn't short out like crazy, because it should be conductive liquid and it was spraying up inside an electric motor. Oh well. So I've also drilled holes here so that when the air comes up and it's turbulent through the baffles, some water will come out and separate and start to run down. That's the plan. It actually works. Tap this in. I've cut this just with a hacksaw. The metal is just slightly thicker than the hacksaw blade. So there we are so far. See 2 baffles. I'm going to have to make the next ones a little bigger because I need more overlap than that. So I'm not sure if this will be the best way to do it or not, but I've put holes in the baffles. I was thinking of putting it this way so as it comes up there's some turbulence and it separates out the water. I'm not sure if that will work or not. If not, then I'll have to reverse it, which means that the holes will probably defeat their purpose. So I'll just grind it down a bit, make it smooth, put it back in service and see what happens. So far I've done over half of the rim. They're 15-inch GM rims. I believe they're 6 inches wide. So I've done over half of one. I've changed the setup slightly because it was sucking up too much water. I've just run this tube in. It's a 1-inch tube, so it's some restriction on the suction. But I've got it wound over to about here, sticking down into the pole. It doesn't leak quite as much. And then this is a wet dry vac, so I didn't want to take the chance any further. So that's inside. There's just a little bit of media down on the bottom. There's no water at all, which is good. The filter is not bad. It's got hardly any dirt on it, which before, with the straight vacuum on the sandblast cabinet, it was terrible. It would plug up really quickly. So I can see a lot better as well what I'm doing. I've also found that I can just leave this lid sitting on top with the weight of the vacuum cleaner on top of it. It's sufficient, so I don't have to keep fighting it to get it off all the time. And there's the murkiness inside. You can see it's quite dirty. It's got lots of dust in there. And when I finish the rim, I will dump that. You can see the water is splashing around quite a bit inside from the suction. So it's got sufficient suction and it's not getting any water into the wet dry vac. So I'd call that a success. Here's the completed sandblasted rim. Sandblasting won't take off anything that's got anything flexible about it. And I don't know what that is exactly. It's kind of like tar or something, but it wouldn't touch that. So I'll have to wire brush that out. Little bits of paint that I missed in the semi-darkness, but I was able to see better than I have been in the past in my wonderful little sandblast cabinet made in a land far away where they eat a lot of rice. So not always the best quality. There's a bit of rust still embedded, and that will wash out. That's just dust. I'll solvent wash that. Mostly it's gone. I didn't go real hard in certain places. Mostly I'm just concerned about what's visible and where the tire beads sit. And once I paint that, that should be okay. It feels pretty good. But the shop vac seems to have worked. Let's have a look inside. Dry in the bottom. Perfect. Hardly any dust on the filter. That's definitely what I wanted. Very filthy water, which is good. That's all the rust that's come off the rim. So that, because the sandblast hood is a little anemic, it took me about 2 hours to sandblast that rim. An hour and a half for sure. So now I will dump the water and clean it out. You can see all the rust that's collected. That was the piece of the hose that was inside the elbow at the top. Perfectly dry though, no water there at all. So I might be able to get away with using the strictly dry vac again. It does fit the system better, but it does work with the wet dry vac also. The baffles seem to have made a huge difference. So to summarize how I made this, we have an inlet which is coming from the sandblaster. It's approximately 8 inches to the center from the floor. That's the inlet. It needs to be a total length of approximately 14-16 inches. This extension here just allows me to plug the hose in, so you don't need these extra couplings and lengths. Just one piece with a coupling on the end will be sufficient. And that comes in and goes to a 90. This is all 2-inch pipe. It has a 3-inch piece sticking down on the bottom, so that comes to within a couple inches of the bottom of the bucket. Pushes the dust into the water so that it is sucked through higher up. So the water traps the dust and settles it out. That comes up, in this case I have a 22.5 inch, or 22.5 degree piece on the end. I'm not sure you need it, but it seems to work fairly well. It gets it close to the edge of the bucket. Then I have a 1-foot piece coming from that, going to another 90-degree elbow, and about an 18-inch piece. That will depend on the height of your shop vac. And then 2 more 90s, another 3-inch piece in the middle, and back down, and then another piece that is shaped to fit inside the input of the shop vac. All this particular ducting will change depending on how you want the hose to enter your particular shop vac. You may not require this piece. This is for a top entrance for the shop vac, whereas most of them come in from the side. But the baffles are important. I put in 3 of them, just a few inches apart. I don't think the distance is too important as long as the air is forced around. These particular ones don't have any overlap, but they do have a fairly narrow gap between them. So the air is coming up and going around like that. And I think that bit of turbulence is very important for keeping the water out. Definitely keep the water out. If you're sandblasting, it is going to be slightly conductive. I'm still amazed I got away with it. That's what I get for working focused and not checking things around me. And then you can see the 3 baffles. I had them this way. So originally I was using this shop vac, which is dry only. It's not wet dry. Problem was that it was sucking water up here and dumping it into the reservoir, through the filter, through the motor, and exhausting and splashing out. Very dangerous affair. So I think I might try it again, since this second one works so much better. And this is how this fits. And these parts are all dry fit, so I can put them together individually. And I had to shave down this little piece of 2-inch pipe to get it to fit inside the shop vac fitting. That's it. It's about 20 bucks in parts. Saves the filters, You don't have so much dust flying around, and the motor should last a lot longer. I want to thank you for watching through to the end. I hope you have enjoyed this video and any of the other ones that you have seen. And I have a favor to ask. The way YouTube works and other social media, if I don't have likes and dingy bells, then I get ignored. So it's getting harder and harder to find my channel when I do searches to check on how it's going. So if you could subscribe or hit the little dingy bell, that would be wonderful. That would help me a lot. If you think you have some friends who might enjoy this series, I ask you to let them know. The more that YouTube and Rumble, etc. see favorites and people who are watching, the more they recommend it. It's getting so that when I even search my channel with the exact name, I end up down the list, and they're putting other sites before this one. So if you can help out in that way, I would sincerely appreciate it. To this point, in the 6 months or so that I've been doing these videos, I've received one comment, which tells me that not many people are watching. The most popular video I've had is about 250 people. So I'm not complaining, and I do hope this is helpful. I would like to see more people watching. It would help to encourage me in these efforts. And the one comment I did have, though, was positive. So in that regard, I'm running a 100% positivity rate. Thank you.